The first thing I want to touch on in regards to our physical performance program is it's the foundation in how Goody and the coaches want to set up our game plan. And so our physical preparation of our athletes is about how we want to play and the style in what we want to play. And so you heard Goody talk about contest, defence and offence, and obviously from a contest perspective, then when we look at our strength and power program, it's about how we're building resilience within our athletes to ensure that they're strong in the contest. From an offence and defence perspective, we look at our two-way running, how when we have the ball in offence, we're able to run with high intensity, high speed, aerobically, to be able to impact the game, but then also when we don't have the ball defensively, from a conditioning perspective. And that's the foundation of how we're trying to prepare our athletes to ensure that they thrive not only within our game style and our game plan, but also in the greater demands of the game. Because as Goody spoke about, increased stoppages, contest, the weather, it all impacts on physically and mentally how resilient we are to sustain that across now a 23-24 round season plus finals. This year gone, pleasingly, what we were able to demonstrate across the in-season period and then further in finals was that we were able to win the most last quarters within the AFL, and that included the final series as well. So our ability to stay resilient throughout a four-quarter game was the best in the AFL, and that was also then matched with the AFL takes the centralised data from Champion Data and Catapult and had us within the top 5 for both work rate and intensity metres across the in-season period. So that gives us real confidence in what we're doing from a pre-season and in-season perspective to maintain that resilience within our group. The feed to that is that what we were able to do this year from a list availability perspective week to week to allow the coaches to select the best team to execute our game plan was 87%, which means that across a 24-round season, you'd have anywhere between 4 to 6 players not available for selection on any week, which is substantially successful across a 24-round season, which over the last couple of years and in the season just gone has been a really positive element of our program in low injury rates. So the year just gone, and this is AFL data, we only had 119 games due to injury. Over the last 10 years, the AFL average is anywhere between 150 to 160 games lost to injury. Within that, you have obviously contact-related injuries or non-contact-related injuries, and pleasingly for us, we only had 2 incidences of soft tissue injury for the entire season across our AFL squad, which is a credit not only to our football program, but our high-performance staff. But the big thing with our injuries and how we're building our resilience is it's our organisational approach to it and the support that Goody, the coaches and Richo and the program give to be able to push our program to prepare our athletes for the demands of the game is a true credit to that leadership and how we want to best prepare our athletes. Unfortunately, within that, as has already been spoken about, the most impacted area within our injuries was our key position players, and in particular, 3 of our key position forwards, and then Harrison Petty, who was obviously a key back that transitioned as a key forward. And so when we dug into possibly some of the reasons for these injuries and trying to better identify whether there were any common correlations, the questions that we asked internally were around the mechanism of the injury. Were we sustaining injuries to the same tissue, to the same joints? Was it occurring at a similar time within the season? Were there any modifiable risk factors that we could have put in place or explored within the pre-season or in-season period to possibly mitigate against any of these injuries? So some of the areas that we explored within this was reviewing ground hardness and ensuring that at both of our fields here at Gosh's and then at Casey, but then also not necessarily knowing what the field hardness was, whether we were playing at the MCG or other fields around the AFL. So we made sure that regularly we were getting measurements on that to ensure that we could manage our playing group if there were any differences within ground hardness. Footwear and the employment of a podiatrist that we consult with regularly He provides some really good education to the playing group, and we're very proactive at how we can continue to educate the playing group on rotating boots and runners. And then ankle and calf strength, and we consulted with some specific experts, both within the orthopaedics area, but also internationally, in particular in rugby union and rugby league, where they've actually seen a substantial increase in ankle and calf injuries in previous, and there's been quite a lot of research done in and around the Island Rugby Union Federation, which provided a great resource for us in regards to how we were better analysing whether our athletes are strong enough from a specific tissue perspective. And pleasingly for us, we were able to remove any of those as possible risk factors for these injuries. Unfortunately, that doesn't make it any easier in admitting that luck plays a role in some of these injuries. And when we look at Bailey Fritsch, Harrison Petty, both of those initial injuries were trauma-based injuries. And then Tom McDonald, unfortunately, was a previously long-standing injury. And then Ben Brown, as we know, we've been working with him really collaboratively and proactively on how we can continue to extend his career. And we had a really great plan for him over pre-season and throughout the in-season period that allowed him to play 18 games last year. It was actually some low back issues that impacted other parts of his season. So pleasingly, the foundation of how we're preparing our athletes physically is standing up across the season and continues to best prepare us for the demands of the game and for finals football. What we're continuously doing is continuing to explore how we can innovate within our areas of strength and power and conditioning, but also what further strategies there are for injury mitigation so that we can continue to maintain that list health that has allowed us to perform successfully over the last number of years. In regards to the athletes that Lammy spoke about, pleasingly, the 3 new recruits are all full training at the moment, and Shane, Tom and Jack all actually came to training the week prior to them actually being required at training. So when our 1 to 4 years were here, they trained fully for that week and have trained fully since. And then our draftees are all integrated into a modified training program, which we do with all of our first year draftees, and pleasingly, as Lammy spoke about, they're all going really well. Currently, Richo and Purdy touched on a couple of our players that aren't in full training that you would have seen. So Angus Brayshaw, obviously at the end of the season, didn't complete. He's integrated back into skills with the group, and we're continuing to work with Angus on gradually integrating him into his contact progressions to have him ready for the season, and he's progressing well. Bailey Fritsch is integrated back into training this week, and he'll be back in full training post the Christmas period. And as Richo and Purdy touched on, Clayton had the knee arthroscope at the end of the season, and he's returned back into some skill work as well, and the Christmas period will be a really important block for him to allow him to integrate back into the squad post the Christmas period. Harrison Petty had his first run on the Alter G after that Liz Frank injury on Monday with real success, and so he'll be building his volumes into training with the group post-Christmas as well. And Jake Melksham's going really well post his ACL reconstruction. Obviously, when you're dealing with those injuries, you're constantly working with the athlete on bringing each different quality back, and he's attacked his rehab really well, and we'll look to integrate him back into training with the group following the Christmas period towards the back end of January. So we're in a really strong position. We're midway through our 3rd week of pre-season with the boys training Monday, Wednesday, Friday and Saturday at the moment, and they've come back in really good shape to build on the foundations that we've been working on for the last few years.